Get ready, it's watercolor tutorial time, so grab your brushes, it's time to paint. Let's dive straight into it. I've drawn a simple outline of the pansy as you can see here, and I'll tell you later on in this video how you can obtain a free traceable so that you can trace it down if you want to. The colours I'm using today are swatched out here from A Gallo, and I've just chosen a few of my favourites to paint this really pretty pansy, but as I always say on my channel, please use whichever colours you want to. You do not have to go out and buy the best quality paints or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I will link all the colours that I'm using today in the information box below so that you can check them out for yourself. Now I'm using copper blue as my background for the pansy. This is one of my favourite colours from the brand, and I haven't really had a chance to use it before. So I decided to use this as my background. So I'm using a number 8 round brush here, and I'm mixing a decent sort of amount of the pigment on my brush here, and I'm just using it to take all over the background as you can see here. Now the secret is a second layer, so I'm going to let that one dry, and I've sped it up here so you can see the entire process. I've just sped up the background bit because it's just applying that paint directly onto the paper. This is wet on dry, so we're going directly onto that paper, and as long as it's dry you're not going to get any lift off with this nice sort of soft round brush here, and going right up to that pencil line to create this lovely smooth background. Just take your time with it and use the tip of your brush to push it into the pencil line like this, and then you need to let it dry completely. Okay, I'm going to start mixing the colours for the pansy, and I've chosen periwinkle, which is a beautiful sort of soft lilac-y mauvey colour, along with Tyrian purple. I've mixed them on my palette here. I've got one on its own and one mixed together to create this kind of bluey purpley tone, and you could use something like a cobalt blue violet if you haven't got that colour. And if you do want to use a similar colour palette to the colours that I'm using today and you don't have them yourself, please let me know in the comments and I'll happily recommend colours for you based on what you have within your own set. So as I said earlier on, the background colour needs to be really, really dry before you do this, otherwise your colours will mix and merge into each other. You don't want that for this kind of painting. So all I'm doing here is switching up the colours on my palette. So I'm picking up the periwinkle and the purple colour, and I'm just kind of varying them on the petals as you can see here. Notice how I'm using the tip of my brush to take it right up to that pencil line, and of course watercolour is all about building up your colours once one colour is dry. You want to make sure that you're building it up in layers, that way your paint won't go muddy, it won't look overworked, and it'll just really look more polished and more finished when you come to finish your painting. You'll see what I mean. So just let these layers dry before you apply the next one, and always go lighter than you think you're going to need to, because I promise you that way it won't go muddy. So again, we're going all over that pansy flower head, apart from the middle section that you can see the pencil lines there. Now at the start of this video I mentioned that we provide you with a free outline and a reference photograph for this tutorial, indeed all of our tutorials here on this channel. So if you want to obtain them, all you need to do is watch it right until the end, where I will put them both up after the outro. All you need to do is pause the video and screenshot them that way, or you can join our private Facebook group where you can have outlines to all of our YouTube tutorials. So if you'd like to join us there, I'll put the link in the description box with everything else. So I've mixed a little bit of arancione and a little bit of lemon yellow there to create the center, and notice how I've left a little bit of negative space for the, I think it would be the stamen and anther. I'm not even sure what that's called. Let me know in the comments. But you can see how I've painted around that bit. That's called negative painting. You're using the white paper to create that negative space. You could use something like a Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White if you wanted to, but traditionally we paint around the white paper for the white to show through. I've sized down a brush here. This is a number 2 pointed round. Notice how I'm just doing a little bit of detail here, switching my colours from my palettes. So we're going from periwinkle to Tyrian purple, just randomly picking them up, not going strictly to the photograph as I always say. We're just using that photograph as a guide. And you can also use your brush at this point to really sharpen up any edges that you might feel are looking a little bit untidy from that first application. So I'm just taking that brush and wiggling it into the paper. The paper that I'm using, by the way, is a cold pressed paper. It has a little bit of texture. This one's from Etcher. It's in an A4 size block, A4 size pad rather, and you can see that the actual size of the painting there is 12 by 11 centimeters if you want to paint the same size as me. So once again, you can see that little patting motion that I'm using with my brush and pulling that brush down. Now I do have a particular method of application, and if you're not familiar with my videos and you'd like to know a little bit more about that, I'll put a video on the top of your screen right now so that you can click through and see it in a little bit more detail. So carrying on the process, building up those layers, notice how I'm just picking up the colours randomly and just blending them together with the tip of my brush. Now every week here on YouTube we have brand new content. We upload every single Tuesday. So if there's something that appeals to you, please can I ask you to subscribe to my channel and hit that little bell on the side there. That way you won't miss new uploads and you can watch and paint along with me. And if you really like botanical paintings and you prefer a much slower pace and a much more in-depth tutorial, you may want to consider joining my Patreon, because we have much slower paced videos over there that you won't find here on YouTube. And in case that's something that interests you, let's take a look. Are you an aspiring artist looking to take your skills to the next level? Or perhaps you're looking for fresh inspiration? Then you may want to consider joining our Patreon. Our Patreon tutorials have much more in-depth instructions and are a much slower pace, and depending on the membership level you choose, you can have personalised feedback from me and video calls. Unlike our YouTube tutorials, our Patreon art classes focus on really learning the art of botanical painting, and I will guide you step by step through the technique and skills you will need to learn and improve your botanical art. All of our Patreon tutorials are exclusive to my patrons and you won't find them on YouTube. So why not join up to our Patreon and start creating botanical art you can be truly proud of. So everything's again dry, so notice how I'm keeping my brush damp while I'm blending that paint. So the little puddle that you see in the middle of my palette there, that's just plain water that's gone a little bit muddy, and I'm using it to clean my brush every time I apply the paint, patting it then on the kitchen paper and then blending it through with just a damp brush. This gives a really lovely transition between each application, and you can see me here doing exactly that, just dipping the brush in the water, patting it dry and then blending it through. That will give you a nice soft merge between each layer. So as I said, you can check out that video that I mentioned earlier on, which explains in a lot more detail. So here I'm just adding a little bit more definition, a little bit of a pattern. So again, picking up the Tyrian purple and just patting it on. I think that kind of natural pattern will be. If you are enjoying this video, could I ask you to hit that like button underneath? It's a way of letting YouTube know that you're enjoying my content, and I'd really appreciate your support. So I'm carrying on the process. This is a number 2 pointed round brush here. This one's from Rosemary, and I'm just again outlining the pansy and just patting it into the paper like this. By using this patting motion, it just means that it's easier to apply the paint. If you're trying to drag your paint on the bumpy paper that is a nice cold press, you might find that it sticks a little bit. So by patting the brush like this, you're releasing the pigment on the brush and you're giving it a lovely, more natural application, and it makes your life a little bit easier when you're applying that paint. Once again, the paint is dry, so I'm going in with another layer. You can see now, but by building these up slowly, you get this really natural looking painting, and it looks really painterly. Where those lines have settled into the paper, that pattern that I painted on, you can see that it's looking like a real watercolour painting, which of course it is. So again, adding a bit more detail and wiggling that brush into that paper like this. Just adding a bit of water there to water down that application, and the same on the other petals. So I've mixed a little bit more of the lemon yellow and Arancione here. You can see it's like an orangey yellow tone. You could use something like an Indian yellow instead if you don't have these two colours. Let's paint a little bit of detail now. So I've mixed a tiny bit of Indanthrone blue. Oh gosh, I don't know how to say that. Indanthrone blue, and I mixed it with a tiny bit of Tyrian purple, just to go in between these little gaps that we see on the yellow section there. Again, it's really important that this is dry. Notice how once I've applied that darker colour, I'm using a very, very fine brush to just wiggle down that little vein there to make it look really, really natural. Again, I'm not going strictly to the photograph, but I'm roughly putting in these darker values. That means a darker colour where I can see those little elements forming. So apply the colour, and then just with a really light touch, you want to bring that line down so that it looks like a natural vein. Just adding a few details here and a little bit of shadow here and there where I think it's needed. We have a few of these little markings on these petals as well, so I'm just putting those in. This is a number 0 liner brush, I think, that I'm using here, but any fine brush that you have will do. If you wanted to use a gouache for the background, you could do that. That would work really, really well. Or of course, you could just leave the background out altogether and just paint the pansy, which would make it even easier to do. Where the paint has settled into the pansy, where it's naturally settled, you can see I'm using the tip of the brush here to outline those natural markings. I love doing this in my paintings, and it just gives them that really painterly look. So where we have that sort of the paint has settled on the paper, where we can see layer 1 underneath, notice how I'm just outlining those splodges of paint. It makes it look really, really painterly and really dramatic. So again, patting motion and a little bit of wiggling with my brush there, just to enhance and just put a few more details in. Just a bit more there. You can see again, I'm outlining that little splodge. Now I'm going over these little elements that we put in earlier on. They're now dry, so we can brighten them up as we need to. So it's important that that layer is dry, as I've said, otherwise what will happen is your paint will lift off, and you don't want it to do that. So make sure each layer is dry before attempting the next. And remember, use what colours you want to for this. You don't have to use the same colours as me. If you have a favourite colour, you could use that to paint this. I'd be really interested to see actually what colours you painted. If you join our Facebook group, as I mentioned earlier, you can share your finished paintings with us there. From our tutorials here on YouTube, and we are an incredible community, and you can have some feedback from me and my team and our other incredible members who have been supporting us there for quite a long time now, so thank you to everybody. Okay, going back over to the middle, I'm just mixing up a tiny bit of that lemon yellow with Arancione and outlining the pansy, as you can see me doing here. This gives it a nice bold look. We can still keep it nice and natural, but it looks more polished and put together by outlining it like this. If you have any questions, do drop them in the comments below. I'm always happy to help you, so just let me know if there's anything that you're struggling with. Please drop them in the comments underneath this video, and I'll do my best to help you with any queries or any questions or struggles that you have. Just continuing the process. Remember to stay right until the end of this video so that you can have access to the reference photograph and the outline, so that you can screenshot that and print it out yourself if you'd rather trace it down, or of course you can draw it freehand if you prefer to. So if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to trace them down in the way that I showed you right at the start of this video. Remember to give this video a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. So let's just take a look at the final result. Thank you for watching, and until next time.